the real breakthrough with Bitcoin is it's the first time where you can send value nearly instantly anywhere in the world without the need for a trusted third party. So without the blessing of a government or a bank or some kind of institution, you now have self-sovereignty of your money. It's the separation of money and state.
Hey everybody, James Shepherd here with another edition of the Merchant Sales Podcast. Today we're talking about Bitcoin. Been a lot of really interesting things that we've seen around stablecoins. We've been talking about in the podcast and just crypto in general. And I thought it was time to have another conversation about Bitcoin and some of the progress there. So we asked Jason Keil to come on from Polaris Payments. He is very passionate about Bitcoin. He's been doing a lot on that side of things. And so Patty and I interview him together today. And we just have a really interesting conversation about some of the developments and some interesting things that actually might really drive consumer behavior over the next 12 to 24 months with some new legislation that's coming up. And so we'll take a look at all of that today. And then we get some sales tips from Rich Norton. Patti Murphy did one of her 4 stories on Today in Payments, and we had some technical difficulties, so I apologize for that. We just got a real quick one for you today. So she's going to give us one story talking about real-time payments, which are really taking off. And so it's an interesting story as well. So this episode is brought to you by Nativia. Head over to nativia.com/ccsalespro to check it out. Nativia.com/ccsalespro. They have a host of solutions, a lot of great stuff. And again, I always like to mention that we're going to interview Jason Keil today. Neither him, Polaris Payments, or any affiliations have any consulting or sponsorship or any paid advertising with my company. This is just a great interview with an industry expert. With that in mind, let's dive in.
Hey, everybody. James and I are here today with Jason Keil, who is the president of Polaris Payments and also a consultant in the area of Bitcoin, which I think will be a really interesting conversation. And I'm going to watch these two guys go at it because I think we have some divergent opinions here. So, James, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I want to hear from Jason and kind of get his story. He and I have been able to talk a couple of times. It's been great. But
Okay, yeah.
Jason, tell us your story. How'd you kind of get into the industry and how'd you end up having this interest in Bitcoin?
I went out to lunch one day with my father-in-law's golfing buddy. And at the time, I was doing door-to-door sales, selling these security systems. And he was like, okay, so ADT makes a residual on, every security system that you sell. Do you make residuals? And I was like, no, but I want to. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, I want to make money while I sleep. And so then the rest was history. So that's how I got into credit card processing. Been in this space for 15 years now. I started buying real estate because I thought 15 years ago, I was like, man, this is technology. Disruption will happen. Something will come along. Maybe Apple Pay will come out with something. Or sorry, Apple will come out with something. Maybe they will call it Apple Pay. And of course, fast forward, residuals are stronger than ever. Payment volume is stronger than ever.
Right.
One thing I didn't realize, though, is the more today that I look under the hood of our current financial system, the more I realize it's not the like fintech and Silicon Valley that might disrupt things, but rather the money itself. The foundational layer of money itself is eroding. So that's what I'm excited about is kind of looking at the history of money and our current problems where we're at today, and then the future of money. So
And the future of money being Bitcoin, I presume.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So Jason, when you think about Bitcoin, where are we at today in terms of, we look at kind of the cycle of innovation and kind of you have, this invention, then you have your early adopters, and then you have your more mainstream. Where do you see Bitcoin at today, and where is it going in the next set of 12 months? Like, where are we at with Bitcoin right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think we're definitely still very early. I mean, this is like a payments podcast, right?
Right.
And so when we zoom out and look at whether it's all the various forms of money like salt and seashells to gold and gold-backed paper money and fiat, the debt-based currency that we use today, we see that monetary adoption always follows the 3 use cases in their order. The first being the store of value, which 15 years, we've seen Bitcoin become a over $2 trillion store of value. We've got nation states and publicly traded companies, and everybody's buying Bitcoin today. The second phase is the medium of exchange, the payments phase. And then the third is where goods and services are denominated in that currency, a unit of account, where things are priced in that currency. So I think we're, the first use case is very fleshed out, right? Like we're well over $2 trillion asset at this point.
Mhm.
That's pretty, the proof is in the pudding there. And I think we are beginning to enter in the spending phase where we're going to see merchants accept Bitcoin and consumers pay with Bitcoin.
And so why is it you talk about the store of value, right? And I agree, we have seen that. Why is that? Why are whether it's governments or companies or individuals, why are people choosing, why are organizations choosing to store value in Bitcoin versus the US dollar, for example?
The magic sauce of Bitcoin is that there's a fixed supply. With the US dollar and really all fiat currencies, it's kind of a stealth tax or a stealth theft, where a small group of elite men can go into a back room, and overnight they can debase your currency. We've seen if you put $100, for example, if you put $100 under your mattress 100 years ago, it's worth $1 today. It's lost 99% of its value. Since 2000, we've lost 40% of the value of the US dollar. And so we've seen the financialization of everything. It's like we don't just need a home to live in. We buy, like in my case, I started buying rental properties because I wanted to store my value because the dollar, you can't, the dollar is broken from a savings technology. It doesn't work as a savings technology. And then we've seen with a recent survey came out. So we're seeing this with merchants specifically as well, where the number one problem that they're experiencing right now is inflation. That this is merchants surveyed. So the number one problem they're experiencing right now is inflation. And so at its most basic level, Bitcoin is a form of money that cannot be printed. It cannot be debased. It is a fixed supply. And so as demand grows, network adoption grows, just like we saw, the internet grew over time. And this is okay. So let's compare the internet for a second. The internet's the first time where you could send information globally instantly, right? With a single click, you could send information anywhere in the world. And the real breakthrough with Bitcoin is it's the first time where you can send value nearly instantly anywhere in the world without the need for a trusted third party. So without the blessing of a government or a bank or some kind of institution, you now have self-sovereignty of your money. It's the separation of money and state, just like we have the separation of church and state, where the government can't say you can and cannot do something with your money. And also, by the way, we're gonna, cut the value of it in half, over a course of a
Sure.
few years.
That's really interesting too, Jason, because my understanding is there's a lot of opposition here in the US to what they call the central bank digital currency, which is, an altcoin, I guess you might say. And the opposition is, of course, government surveillance and
Yeah.
consumer privacy. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, Bitcoin sort of like reinforces that privacy of your money in addition to um, enhancing the store value.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a huge use case for consumers to have that security, that privacy. Merchants don't have to any longer collect sensitive personal data, sensitive card numbers. Like I don't necessarily want to give up where I live just to buy a product online. Now, for shipping address, that's different, right? But if let's say
Right.
I ship something to my office, I don't necessarily want to put in like my billing address, right?
Mhm.
There's all kinds of privacy reasons. It's the first debasement resistant, confiscation resistant, and private decentralized form of money, which it's definitely a huge value add compared to CBDCs.
So let me just challenge a couple of assumptions there that I wanted to clarify. So first of
Yeah.
all, the idea of no government control. What role has government played so far in Bitcoin here in the U.S. and abroad in terms of my understanding is that there has been quite a bit of regulation that's taken place around Bitcoin. Do you foresee governments eliminating existing regulations, or in my mind, I would imagine that there's going to be a lot more regulation? And so I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that the Bitcoin ecosystem has the ability to control that and say, no, we're not going to allow the government to have any control. Doesn't the government still have the ability to say, no, we want to take control and we will because it's our country? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Of
Yeah, so I mean, there's all kinds of tools. We're only 15 years in. It's an extremely new form of money.
course,
And so
right.
there's all kinds of tools that are being built out each and every day that make it easier and easier to access. particularly for folks who are not necessarily super tech savvy, right? And so, how do you get Bitcoin? Well, you can buy it from an exchange. You can, like a peer-to-peer transaction. You can mine it, or you can sell your goods or services for it. And so that really separates a merchant in a really big way, where they can now start accepting this form of money without having to like buy it from an exchange. But today, the United States government does require exchanges to collect what's called KYC, like know your customer. There's all kinds of regulations, which I think for a lot of the builders in this space, there's been a lot of there's not been a lot of clarity, and that has caused a lot of the builders to go overseas. Now, a lot of the wealth is still stored in Bitcoin here in the States. So 40% of all Bitcoin wealth is stored here. So you got well over $2 trillion assets. You've got over $1 trillion, or roughly $1 trillion, let's say, stored here in the States. But for builders, a lot of the builders are based in the States, but some of them are based abroad. Now, fortunately, we are getting more clarity, even as soon as recent as this week, which I think is really helpful for a lot of these companies.
Mm. And so,
what clarity is that, if I may ask? What are you referring to when you say clarity?
Yeah, there's like the Genius Act. There's all kinds of these different.
Okay. Right.
I'll give you a much more relevant example that has not yet passed, but this week, for example, that's relevant for merchants.
Uh-huh.
The White House announced that they have support, that the president supports the new de minimis rule, where below $600 threshold would be viewed as a currency rather than an asset, which basically means it's a starting point. Now, that number I would think will grow over time. But at the moment, technically, if you buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin, you got to pay capital gains or capital losses on that transaction, because they view it just like real estate or gold or any other asset, like a stock. Now, when that passes, then anything below that threshold will just be a regular everyday currency. You don't have to report any taxes or anything like that on it.
Okay.
So there is, I mean, that was just this week alone, very relevant for merchants.
yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong here. I think what you're trying to say, Jason, is if I own $50,000 in Bitcoin, right? One of the reasons that I might not want to use that in a mainstream way to buy something is because, hey, there's all these tax implications. I have to record capital gains and losses as if I'm trading stocks. Whereas now when I go down and I want to buy that, the clothing item or whatever it might be, if it's under $600, that might drive me to use my Bitcoin more, because now it's like, well, hey, I've got all this Bitcoin. I've got 50,000 worth, rather than paying taxes on the fact that I bought it for 7,000 and it's now 50,000. I might want to use that for some everyday items and things that I can buy on a regular basis, because I don't have to pay taxes on that gain.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, a lot of folks just export a spreadsheet and provide that to their CPA or the IRS. But there's certainly, I mean, it does create some friction. And when that friction gets eliminated, it's going to be so much easier for a consumer to just not have, it's a no-brainer at that point.
Well, and again, to me, not even the friction as much. It's interesting, as we didn't talk about this in our last conversation, but I could actually see that one driving more than anything else, because what's interesting to me is we're talking about a big tax advantage, right? So again, if I'm in the US today and I have 50,000 in Bitcoin, or even if I had 2,000, whatever, odds are I probably paid a lot less than that for it, because it's gone up a lot, right? So I potentially have this tax burden. Well, if this law gets passed, one of the ways I can eliminate that tax burden is by just using that as my form of currency to go buy stuff, as long as it's under $600. I probably want to do that.
You'd be heavily economically incentivized to start spending with your Bitcoin immediately.
In amounts under $600.
Yeah, and again, that's just a starting point. Like I think that they got to get something, they got to provide a specific number in the beginning. I would imagine that number would grow over time.
Yeah. Okay, so the other one I was going to challenge a little bit was, you were talking about kind of the decentralized nature of it, and I'm actually a little curious about that, because my understanding is that the vast majority of these Bitcoin transactions are running through an exchange. And as we've seen, these exchanges have had their fair share of issues. There's been quite a few that have had lots of fraudulent things and crazy stuff going on. What is the role of the exchange in Bitcoin, and to what extent is that providing the same level of centralization that, let's say, banks are providing with fiat?
Yeah. One of the very first rules, if we go back to the store of value use case, the very first rules of Bitcoin is not your keys, not your coins. What does that mean? Well, it basically means because Bitcoin is a bearer asset. If I hold a gold bar in my hand, who owns that gold bar? Well, functionally, I do because I'm holding it, right? And the same thing with Bitcoin. If you are bearing that asset, you effectively own that asset. Now, when you give the keys to the castle to an exchange and you don't actually own, at the end of the day, right? You can get rug pulled. You don't ultimately hold that Bitcoin. And that is why there's a lot of advocates, like a ton of advocates, to as soon as you buy, let's say you're not a merchant, but you buy some Bitcoin on an exchange, as soon as you do that, get it off. Start holding take self custody of that Bitcoin. There's a lot of really great exchanges that are Bitcoin only, that don't have all the shenanigans and altcoins and the shiny objects and distractions. There's some that do proof of reserves. Those are great. Those are helpful. You can also, it's a little bit more technical, but like I run my own Bitcoin node, which is allows me to do payments without an exchange. It just comes directly off my own server, basically.
Hmm.
Um,
Do you
Not
see
everyone.
that? Do you see that as the future? Like what direction do you think it will go though, as far as we move forward and obviously the next phase here that we'll talk about in a minute is going to be used as a medium of exchange, to purchase
Yeah.
things. Do you think that as we move towards that, though, I would, again, just my limited knowledge, I was assuming that probably the exchanges would almost be more prevalent because, we have to facilitate easy transactions for less technical people, or do you see
Yeah.
more tools coming up that are going to allow more and more people to say, hey, I don't need the exchange, I can just hold this in my own Bitcoin wallet or whatever?
Yeah, it's a huge gradient. I mean, last time we talked to her, you kept bringing up the masses. Like, are the masses are they gonna be going through all the steps? Like, have this USB stick to like, it's a gradient. I do think it's really important, particularly if you're storing wealth, to hold your own keys, because I mean, at the end of the day, in terms of like I mean, the United States government, for example, we talk about how, we live in a place of financial privilege. So do we really have to have something like Bitcoin at the end of the day? Well, it's certainly a lot more helpful in a lot of other countries before the United States. But take this country, for example, the government did seize citizens' gold in the 1930s. And so there's nothing stopping from the United States government doing that again with something like digital gold. And so is it important to have control where um, you know you get to just decide if want to do what they're asking or not, right? It's like Patty, you talked about fraud and hacks and different things. Like it's very helpful, I think, to have control at the end of the day. But for a lot of the masses, it's also helpful just to like keep things on your phone on an app, and particularly for spending. Like if you're going to be spending with merchants, if you lose $600 at the end of the day, for a lot of folks, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to you know
Right.
completely change their life.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. So let's talk about this next phase and what would need to occur and all that. So this next phase is for it to really be considered a true currency, not just an asset, right? We have to be able to spend it. Um,
Yeah.
I want to start by talking about Square a little bit. Patty reported on this a few weeks ago, but maybe Jason, you could kind of update us on what Square is doing with Bitcoin and specifically
Yeah.
Bitcoin acceptance, because I know that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so by the end of this year, over 4 million merchants will begin accepting Bitcoin with a flip of a switch. Um, and what does that look like? Well, it's automatic. The merchant doesn't have to do anything. Um, they just keep using their Square terminal. And when the items go in the shopping cart, let's say you get a cup of coffee, um, then and they flip the terminal around, then you can pay with a QR code with Bitcoin. And just to clarify a couple of things, when we say Bitcoin, really we're referring to a layer two network called the Lightning Network that is running on top of Bitcoin. That is what allows for the scalability of transactions on Bitcoin. So when Square says they're accepting Bitcoin, technically it's through the Lightning Network. When Steak and Shake
Right.
says our 400 locations are now accepting Bitcoin. That's also going through the Lightning Network.
Right.
Also, just to clarify, it is denominated in sats. Are you guys familiar with sats?
No.
So sats stand for satoshis. Sats are just like there are 100 cents in a dollar. It is a unit of Bitcoin. And so I think as we continue to appreciate, the price of Bitcoin continues to appreciate. I think maybe houses will be denominated in Bitcoin, but for everyday goods and services, everything will be denominated in sats. And so on a Square terminal, it shows like I put a when I was in Vegas, I demoed the Square terminal at the Bitcoin conference. And so I put a t-shirt, the t-shirt was $40. I put that on the shopping cart. And then it was really easy math at the time because it's 100 million sats in one Bitcoin. And so because the price of Bitcoin was $100,000 at the time, for a $40 t-shirt, it was 40,000 sats. Now, as time goes on, assuming Bitcoin continues to do what I think it will do, which is appreciate, then that number of sats will come down and become easier and easier. Maybe at some point it'll be 4,000 sats instead of 40,000 sats. And so it'd just be really easy to buy something. Go ahead.
Right. And help me understand. So I've never bought anything with Bitcoin. So help me
Yeah.
understand the I bought it and sold it before, but like in that context, right? So you got that t-shirt. Help me
Yeah.
understand exactly how you paid for that t-shirt. Was this you pulled up an app on your phone? Like walk me
Yeah.
through. How did it work exactly?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of apps. The app that I used is called Strike, Strike. And it has great Bitcoin Lightning functionality, and it just got great like off ramp, on ramp, off ramp in terms of fiat. So you can connect your bank account, you can wire money to it, whatever. So I had dollars in there. And here's another cool hack about that app in particular is that you can actually, if you have dollars in there, you can buy something and pay with Bitcoin, but it actually comes out of the dollar side of your app. And so there's no tax, it's not a taxable event. There's no tax consequences for you. But the merchant accepted Bitcoin. And so sometimes we're seeing more and more merchants offer a discount for if you pay with a this better form of money. I bought something this morning and I got a 3% discount and I paid with Bitcoin. And so you can pay with Bitcoin right there. It's just a QR code. You scan it. It's literally faster than Visa. Like it's incredibly fast. It's really cool to watch.
Hmm. And so in that scenario, like the QR code you mentioned this morning, you scanned the QR code and what happened?
So both on my phone and on the screen, it gave confirmation. So there was like little confetti that came down, little.
Oh, I'm sorry. So back up a second. And again, I,
Yeah,
I know this is probably a really stupid question, but I think most of
yeah,
my
no, you're
audience
good.
is like me and they
Yeah,
don't understand this.
yeah.
So to clarify, you tapped on an app on your phone
Mhm.
and then you scanned the QR code,
Yes, yeah. I just
right?
pulled out my phone.
Okay.
I opened up the Strike app, and
Okay.
then I hit pay. So there's a Bitcoin side and a dollar side. So whatever you got, if you've got dollars or Bitcoin, either way, you can just scan. It opens up the camera in the app, and then you can scan the QR code.
Okay, got it. And so
Yeah,
then you scan the QR code, and because of that, that QR code communicated with the app and said, "Hey, this is going to cost $30 or something." And then the app automatically was like, "Okay," and then it took money that you had in USD and dollars,
yeah,
right? And it kind of instantly converted that into Bitcoin, used Bitcoin to make the purchase, deducted the amount of
yeah.
dollars from you, and then that merchant was potentially, depending on how they're accepting Bitcoin, they were potentially left with Bitcoin. They now have some Bitcoin in exchange for what they provided.
Yeah, potentially. It depends on how they set it up. So in the case of
Right.
Square, you can actually dial it up or down. And so by default, later this year, when 4 million merchants begin accepting Bitcoin, it's by default going to auto convert to fiat because it's like,
That's what most
for
people want for now.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
But the it's up to the merchant. So they can say, actually, I want to accept it in that native currency that the customer paid with. And I want to hold Bitcoin. And then they can keep it in Square or they can, take self-custody or send it wherever they want to send it.
Interesting. Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of merchants, based on recent kind of asset appreciation, are probably going to say, "Well, I'm only getting 3% of my revenue from Bitcoin. I'll just hang on to it like a savings account and see what happens." It's probably what they're
Right.
going
Yeah,
to do.
100%. It's like a 50% CAGR. Like the compound annual growth rate is like, I mean, pick any, you talk about volatility, but like pick literally any 4 year time horizon. As long as you zoom out to 4 years,
Right.
it's going to appreciate, it has appreciated dramatically.
Sure.
Um,
Right. Right. And again, a big part of that being the uh, limited supply, right? So it's the,
yes,
right. And so
that
there's
is the secret sauce.
When
It's a fixed supply.
how long in your mind? I mean, I've heard some numbers about how long it'll take to mine all the Bitcoin available. What's your assessment of that?
Yeah, I mean, we're already, I think, at like 95-ish%. It's well in the 90s.
Okay.
So depending upon how you want to look at it, we're like effectively already like the vast majority has been mined. But the thing is, it cuts in half every 4 years. And so in 2024, I believe in April, it was 6 Bitcoin. If you solve a block, then the miner was rewarded with over 6 Bitcoin. And then after that point, it was I think it's 3.125 right now. And then it will get cut in half again. So every 4 years, it's kind of gets cut in half. And so I think it's roughly about 100 years from now where it's ultimately no more
there's no
Bitcoin mined.
way.
However, the
Yeah.
miners will still be economically incentivized uh, to strengthen and secure the network through transaction fees. A lot of, once we get super deep into the technicalities, it starts to get a little bit over my head. But I know a lot of people way smarter than me that know a lot about this stuff. They're very
Sure.
confident and,
And a
just,
hundred years from now, none of us is probably going to be around knowing this.
Right.
yeah, it'll be like maybe my grandchildren or something. But yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so I have two other things I want to cover real quick. The first one is always kind of my big beef with Bitcoin that we talked about last time, and I talk a lot about, which is, mainstream adoption, right?
Yeah.
I still haven't seen the kind of rationale for like why I would use Bitcoin. Now, again, we started this off with an interesting tax incentive idea, which is really,
Yeah.
really cool, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, right? As a just a pure currency, right? It seems to me that I don't know that most people care as much about the anonymity side of it. I mean, maybe they eventually will, but in the States, that doesn't seem to be a big blocker. So I guess
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, why should people, why do you think consumers over the next like decade are going to start using Bitcoin as more of a currency to buy mainstream things?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with merchants. So when cars came out, well, we had dirt roads because we just had horses everywhere, right? So we had to build roads first before we could build all the cars. And
Right.
similarly, I think merchants need to start accepting Bitcoin before, because consumer can want to pay with Bitcoin all they want. Um, Now, obviously, that just in the last 45 days, we've seen the Square announcement, the Stake and Shake announcement. There's all, it's growing every day.
Right.
But I think that for regular small, medium-sized merchants, right, that are not using Square or whatever, I think they're beginning very, very early, but beginning to wake up and ask, like, why would I keep exclusively accepting credit cards that cost me 3% plus chargeback risk plus delays on settlement when I could be taking Bitcoin instantly? Um, I had a merchant that called me recently, and she was on the verge of tears, and was she had gotten a chargeback. She didn't have great documentation. She had taken the card over the phone. She had put in all the materials, paid for that, paid for the employees and everything. And then Visa decided that the cardholder won that case. And she was like, Jason, this is fraud. Like, this is such an unjust system. Like, I'm getting screwed. And my hands were tied in the duopoly that we live in with Visa and MasterCard, where they basically say, if you want to stay alive as a modern day business, you have to accept these card brands, and you can earn 97% instead of 100%. And at the end of the day, you may or may not get to keep all of it, right? Like we may yank the funds out of your bank account later on down the road. So the no chargeback thing I think is important. I think a lot of us in the industry kind of shrug our shoulders and say like that's just how it's always been. When a merchant calls and says like, "Hey, it's Columbus Day. Why didn't I get my money?" And you're like, "Oh well, the banks are closed today." Um, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and it's like that's just the
Right.
way it is, right?
Right.
But the ability to accept money 365, 24/7,
Mhm.
regardless of if it's a holiday or a night or weekend, I think that's helpful. there's all kinds of opportunities for entrepreneurs to set themselves up in a strategic position by accepting Bitcoin now, even if the volume is low initially. We've got, it's a global currency. I've got one of my merchants keeps accepting Canadian cards, and we turned off AVS, and then we got all these fraud, card testing. So we turned AVS back on, except that the gateway only allows for 5 digits instead of 6 digits. Well, Canadian cards have 6 digit zip code. There's like all kinds of like friction. It's like it
Yeah.
would just, if it's a Visa card, it should work just fine. Except that once you get into the details, we've
Yeah, it
drawn these
doesn't.
arbitrary lines on maps and said like this is the place where you can use your money. You can't use it as easily outside of these boundaries, right? Well, the internet knows no bounds. The internet just works everywhere, right? And similarly, why not use an internet-based form of money? It's 2025. There's all kinds of I mean, we can get into like,
Yeah.
uh, increased sales is another, I think, no-brainer right now because we are early. Um, you can serve a new customer base. There's like a passionate, growing global community of Bitcoiners who are actively seeking out places to spend their sats. And the cool thing is like you're tapping into an affluent customer base because the cost of living for those folks the cost of living is going down every year for them. It's the exact opposite. It's like everyone else living in the fiat land. Like eggs are going up, energy is going up, housing is going up. Take housing, for example. I started selling real estate to buy Bitcoin when I realized that when you denominate real estate in this new form of money, denominated in Bitcoin, the real estate's actually going down. Like real estate's a terrible investment. Like I made all this money in fiat, but denominated in Bitcoin, it was a horrible investment because the price of Bitcoin is appreciating so much faster than real estate that so basically my point is like you've got an opportunity to tap into all kinds of new customers that have money that want to spend
Yeah.
um, with your merchant and then I mean how many of your merchants enjoy taking PCI compliance tests like you're
Right.
no longer
Right.
there's all kinds of self
Well,
sovereignty etc.
yeah, and again, I've always said that I've said for probably 5 years that merchants should be accepting Bitcoin. I've never quite seen the rationale for consumers to spend with it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of innovations that'll come down the road, and I think right now maybe it's hard to even see what those motivations would be. The other big question I would have for you that's more practical is if I'm an ISO today and I've
Yeah.
got 20 agents and we sell 35, 40 merchants a month, right?
Yeah.
I want my merchants to be able to accept Bitcoin. I have two questions for you. How do I do that? Simple version. And secondly, how do I make money doing that?
Yeah, good questions. We are very early still. So I mean not to like toot my own horn, but I mean I would say the first thing is just reach out to well, I mean I'm really passionate about this stuff. I'd love to help,
Yeah, of course. I
ISOs.
know you would.
I'm really excited about this stuff. So um the thing is there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of it's hard
Yeah.
to find the signal through the noise. There's a lot of like
Right, right,
distractions and shiny objects and like crypto this and stable coins that and all kinds of things, right?
right.
So education is the number one thing, and understand what this is and how it works because you really don't want to get your merchant, you know, in a tight spot. It's you get them set up on FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried turns out he's a crook and they all
Right,
their money gets wiped away or I mean there's
right.
tons of stories like that. So yeah, I'm happy
Yeah.
to chat with the merchant. Sorry, with the merchant, yes, or the ISO.
Okay.
We are beginning to see residuals come out for some of these Bitcoin payments gateways, and so and I have relationships with several of them, and so don't think, oh, like this isn't credit cards, I'll never get residuals. Why would I ever pitch Bitcoin? It can really be a good value add for the merchant.
Sure.
Um, and there is opportunity that we're beginning to see opportunity where you can make residuals as well.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll have to have you back on again because there's obviously so much more we can talk about we didn't get into today. But just for sake of time, before we let you go, can you share the how people would reach out to you if they wanted to learn more about Bitcoin acceptance for their ISO?
Yeah. Yeah. So my website, you can visit it at bitcoinpaymentsadvisor.com. Again, bitcoinpaymentsadvisor.com. And yeah, I would love to, or you can just, my email is jason@polarispayments.com. You can send me an email as well. But yeah, I would love to help out and love to help onboard the ISO, the agent, the merchant, however I can help out.
Love it. Jason, thank you so much for taking time to share with us. I loved seeing your passion. It's like so interesting to me because you're one of the first people I've talked to that's like a payments expert, like a payments guy,
Yeah.
but a Bitcoin payments guy. So it's really kind of cool because I haven't seen that as much. I know a ton of people in the Bitcoin space, but I
Yeah.
think you have this interesting thread that you understand the payments business, you understand the ISO business, and then also this Bitcoin stuff. So I really appreciate you jumping on and taking the time to share with us today.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks
thank
for
you,
having me, James.
Jason.
Thanks, Patty.
Well, I'm back here with my good friend Rich Norton today. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm doing excellent. Great to talk with you always.
Absolutely. So we've been talking, just kind of sharing a lot of practical tips for agents getting into the business. But one of the biggest decisions that I think agents have to make when they get into this business, Rich, is what type of company they want to work with. And of course, there are some that have extensive industry experience, or they're building out a big team and all that. And so they're going to look for a company that's kind of hands off and all of that, right? But then there's also the other alternative is a team like yours where there's a lot more kind of hands on, a lot more mentorship and training and things like that. Talk about, in your opinion, with a new agent, what should they be looking for as they come into the industry when they're choosing the processor to work with?
Definitely. As a new representative, now more than ever, you need to be with the right company, number one. And I've get a lot of calls since we've done these interviews, over these videos over the last couple of months, bunch of calls. The story that I hear over and over again is, hey, I'm working with this company and I don't have any training. I'm not getting much support. They tell me just go out and get a statement, and I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm very, very frustrated, or I can't get a hold of anybody. No knock on other companies, but we're the opposite of that, and that's our commitment with our team. So I tell everybody coming into the industry, number one, get with a right company. And I'm talking about a company that the things that you don't think about, when your merchants are having questions or they're having issues or they need to be taken care of, you want to know that your company is going to give them the support that they need. And thankfully, we have that with our team. But also as a representative, you want to make sure that you're taken care of, that your future is in good hands. Because out of all the people that I've interviewed over the last couple of years, many unfortunately have given me nightmare stories about how they lost their pay, how they lost their residual, and so forth. And you want to be with a company that you never have to worry about that either. But even beyond that, getting with a team that is going to teach you how to do the business from day one, because you don't want to be out there as a lone ranger trying to figure this out. And that's the calls that I get all the time. So with us, my passion is to teach people how to be incredibly successful in the industry. When we take someone on board with our team, I'm giving them everything we possibly can. I tell them, you're going to get 100% commitment from us with training, support. We have sales blitzes, we have videos, we have Monday Zoom calls, we have everything that you need in order to become successful. You have our 100% commitment. The only way that somebody would fail is they simply didn't apply themselves. And that's all you have to do. So if you're thinking that just do what I do, that's all you have to do. So being with the right company, being with the proper training, and being part of a team, because sales and this industry can be a very lonely business when you're out there. If you're a lone ranger, more power to you. I mean, you're showing that you've got discipline, you can overcome a lot, but it's difficult for a new representative that goes out there and gets their butt kicked for about a week and doesn't write anything, and they go back home, whether they're married or not. It's like, did you make any money today? Now the pressure is even more on. But
Right.
it's important to be part of a team. Like when we do these sales blitzes, for example, I tell everybody from day one when we do our first sales class, you are going to be brainwashed this week. Are we going to brainwash you? Yes, we are. We're going to brainwash you how to have the right mindset, how to go out and sell. You are going to learn by the end of this week what it truly means to be successful and what you need to do to become successful. And it's amazing when we do these sales blitzes, I tell them it's merchant services boot camp for a week. You're going to say, this guy's nuts, I'm out of here, or you're going to say, this guy's nuts, I want to be like them. Right. And that's the difference right there. And they go back home. And I love to see where we've taken representatives that have gone out beforehand and writing a couple a month. Now they're writing 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 a month. It's like, I get it. I get what it takes. No secret formula. Leave the house in the morning, go out and make the calls, work Monday through Friday, take the weekend off and go do that. If you do that over a long period of time and you're with the right team, you're going to get rewarded for it. Not only monetarily, but I love the fact that we're in contests all the time. We're going to be doing a beautiful trip in Mexico. We're taking 19 representatives. Best vacations ever because you're around like-minded people, and I love to watch everybody celebrate. So being part of a team, it's kind of corny, being part of a family, it's a big difference rather than being a lone ranger.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Rich, for those who want to learn more about what it would look like to be on your team specifically, where would you send them to learn more?
Yes, absolutely. Reach out to me at 904-434-4635, or you can email me at payrock, Payroc, richnorton@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rich. Always a pleasure recording these with you.
Thank you, James. I appreciate you very much.
Okay, well, I wanted to give everybody an update on real-time payments because they're really getting real.
Nice.
I know. I love those alliterations. So
Right. You couldn't resist.
Whatever. Yeah, I can't resist it. In the second quarter, RTP, which is the private sector network operated by the clearinghouse, averaged 1.18 million payments, representing a total of $481 billion. That's a 195% increase over the value of the previous quarter.
Wow. Okay, wait, hold on. So RTP, the real-time payment network, has increased like basically tripled from one quarter to the next quarter.
Well, doubled 195% is almost 200%.
Right. Right. Yeah. Wow. That's
Yeah,
actually pretty crazy. Okay.
that's pretty crazy, right? You know, the average payment sent across the network rose from $832, $42 in January to just over $4,000 in June.
Wow. And
They
what's driving? So I feel like I got to zoom out a little bit here. So I feel like I'm a little bit in the dark. So I understand what RTP is. What are, maybe you're about to get to this, but what are the use cases that are driving this growth? Like, is this B2B payments or what is this?
They're B2B. They're you know, a lot of them are also like these you know, the Venmo settlements and the PayPal settlements. There's merchant settlements are in there.
So is this, so let me restate this for our audience and for myself and see if I've got this right. So I think what you're saying is, okay, there's already all this technology and all these payments are happening, but behind the scenes, everybody's been kind of waiting for RTP to go live so that they could build on top of it. And now that it's live, we're seeing that rapid adoption and a lot of these payments are now running over these new rails. Is that kind of what you're saying?
RTP has been live for a while. It's just that it's catching on. There are more banks that are linking in. A lot of the back-end processors are now linking into RTP, which is bringing a
Interesting.
lot more of the smaller financial institutions in.
Got it.
The
So
other
it's
thing,
becoming, it's kind of the like a downstream thing where it's becoming more available to whether that's software companies or
right,
fintechs or banks or whatever. They're finally now, like, because their larger upstream partners are now adopting RTP, they're now
right.
able to take advantage of the benefits of it.
I mean, and just in the second quarter, they saw a 51% increase year over year in the number of financial institutions that were participating.
I see. And these are mostly large financial institutions. So each
Yeah,
new
well,
one that comes in probably is a big deal.
they're the large ones, but they're also the large ones were there already. These are mostly the community banks and the credit unions that are being
Mm.
linked in by their back end processors.
Yeah, it sounds to me like, oh, the big picture is there's a lot of latent demand as far as there's a lot of people that have been wanting to use RTP, but they haven't been able to, and now they can.
And now they can. And then the other thing that contributes to this is they increased the value that you can you know,
Oh, the size of a transaction you can
size of
send
the
through?
transaction, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay, so now you're getting more B2B in there because of that.
Right. Sure.
And then and then on the other thing, and this is where it's sort of like just starting out, is FedNow, which is the payment network operated by the Federal Reserve. It's been charting some significant growth, but unlike RTP, FedNow is a relative newcomer. It was launched just 2 years ago, and its numbers are modest. It has about 1,400 financial institutions that use the network, mostly community banks and credit unions. And just to put that in perspective, there are about 10,000 federally insured financial institutions in the U.S., so about 10%
Mm.
of FIs are using FedNow.
Mm.
And FedNow during the second quarter of 2025 handled 2.1 million transactions, up from 1.3 million during Q1. The average payment was about $3,000. So they're a little bit small. It's a little bit less,
Right.
you
Sure.
know. Um, both networks have capped the size of allowable payments for FedNow moved from like 500,000 to 1 million. And as
Mm.
I explained before, RTP is up to 10 million is the top transaction. So I think we're really getting real about real-time payments here. And I think for our listeners, one of the things that's worth noting is that this is going to make some really significant, once this really takes off in terms of merchant funding
Right.
and Asian funding. I mean, it's going to be a lot more. We're not going to have the lags that have been, historically there once these networks really start taking off.
Hmm. Very
So,
interesting. Yeah, well,
yeah,
yeah. I'll be interested to see how all of that kind of plays out. It's so to me, it's interesting to see how it fits into our ecosystem and becomes more and more practical for the merchant.
right.
But it definitely whenever you see a trend like that where it's like gaining momentum, it's gaining steam, then you're like, okay, how is this going to impact me? And so that's yeah, good stuff, Patty.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really interested in seeing how this goes. I mean, but definitely one of the use cases is merchant funding and residuals.
Right, right,
Paying residuals. So
cool.
definitely there's potential there to really impact our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.